Hi there. Welcome to the webinar. We're getting started in just a few minutes. So actually, if you want, you can if you have any questions you'd like to ask, you can put them into the chat box. I'd love to see them before we get started. We're going to be asking a couple of polls as well during the webinar. So if you have any questions, concerns, you want to know anything about the keto diet, just kind of put them into the chat box or the Q&A, and we'll be answering them actually at the end, mainly because I'll be going back and forth, but we'll answer those at the end. Okay, great. Anybody want to say where they're from? Okay. And what you're hoping to get out of the webinar. That'd be great. Okay. Ashley, and where are you from? We have some people here who are nearby. Let's see, from the chat. Somebody from Wichita. That's great. Any place else? Yeah. Okay. All right, so we'll be starting in just a few minutes. And what we'll be going over tonight, we'll just kind of talk while we're waiting. What we'll be going over tonight is not only what the ketogenic diet is, but who it's good for, who shouldn't be on a ketogenic diet, because that's just as important, and how you can get started. Yeah, so that's what we'll be discussing over the course of this whole of the evening. And I'm glad you all joined us today. Yeah, okay. Can everyone hear me? Does the sound good? Video good? If you can, just kind of raise your hand if you can do that. If not, put into the chat. If you can't hear me, if you see my mouth going and you don't hear anything, would you put that into the chat as well? That'd be great. Okay. Okay. Welcome, Bethan and Alyssa, Kevin. Glad to have you here. Sounds good? Good. All right. So if there's any question with sound or anything, just let me know. That would be great. And we'll be getting started in just one moment. We're going to get started on time because I value your time as well. Welcome, Amy. Good to see you all. We're going to be starting in just a few minutes. And if you have any questions or anything in particular you want to know about the ketogenic diet, put it into the chat or the Q&A, and I will actually, I'll be answering them at the end, if you don't mind, unless you hear the answer while I'm talking, which is also possible. So we'll be looking forward to that. Okay. All right, we are at 7 p.m. And so what I'm going to be doing is sharing my screen, and I'll be going back and forth because we're going to do a couple of polls as well. So actually, let's do our poll first. So here we go. So here's our first poll, if you would just kind of answer it. So there's just two quick questions. Have you ever tried the ketogenic diet before? Yes or no? Not sure. And why are you interested in learning about the ketogenic diet? And you can choose as many as you want. So just kind of, if you can, just kind of put some answers in there. Okay. So yes and no, like 50-50. More now with the no's. Okay. And why you're interested. Okay. Want to lose weight, tired, and some other. Okay. Great, great. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to start to share my screen in just a second. Okay, I'm going to bring this over. I'm going to share my screen. Get to that. And then we'll start with this. Okay, so this is Keto 101, and I want to welcome you to that. That's why you're here. Um, so first of all, is this you? Are any of these you? So do you have like a stubborn excess weight gain that you just can't get rid of? And that's usually why people are coming to the ketogenic diet. That's why they hear about it today. Low energy, brain fog. So if you just can't think straight, that actually can have a lot to do with how you're eating and what kind of food you're eating. But what sometimes people don't realize is that what we eat can affect not only our weight, but also things like our skin. So if you suffer from eczema or psoriasis, this may also be what you're eating, the foods that you're eating, especially carbohydrates. And are you inflamed? So with inflammation, what we're looking at is what people are realizing more and more is that things like joint pain, um, actually diabetes, arthritis, and now sometimes even cancers. Some of these cancers are supposedly related to inflammation. So also, are you craving sweets and carbs? Do you suffer from a chronic disease like diabetes or asthma? And so the main thing is that have you tried a lot of diets before without success? Sometimes even have you tried the ketogenic diet and just not been able to stick to it? So if any of these are you, then you've come to the right place, and hopefully I can give you some great information tonight so you'll be able to get those answers. I'd like to introduce myself briefly to those of you who don't know me. I am Dr. Susan Lovelle. I am the founder and medical director at Premier Wellness, and I have been a plastic surgeon and very, very happy for the last 20 years. However, I started having patients who I couldn't help. I would be able to do surgery on them, but they still weren't feeling well. They weren't at their best. And so I started searching along with some of my own personal health issues. And I came across something that's now termed functional medicine. What this is a way of looking at not just the symptoms, but actually looking at the root causes of various illnesses or diseases, if you want to call them that. And then treating the root cause as opposed to treating the symptom. And so when you do that, you end up with not just covering up those symptoms, but actually healing. That's what personalized wellness is, and what we are. We are all unique. So what may work for me may not work for you, and that's completely understandable. I am committed to helping you feel your best. And this is a lifelong thing. I knew it when I was 6 that I wanted to become a physician. And I've used that information that I've gotten from dancing. Actually, I didn't say I was a dancer, didn't I? Danced for about 17 years. But I used that and then used the medical training and then used this love of functional medicine to put something together, which I now call Premier Wellness. I also want to let you know that I do work here in the Wichita and Newton area, but I also work virtually. So if you're coming from far further away, I can also work with you that way. Okay. Now, my number one question for you tonight is, are you committed? I want to know if you are committed to just bursting out of yourself. So you're going to get some information tonight, but the one thing I want to let you know is that the ketogenic diet is, especially in the beginning, is not a particularly easy thing to do. And so it's good to have help. It's good to have guidance and to know where you're going and how you're going to do that. And that's what I'm going to help you with. But you also have to be committed to yourself. You have to make that choice to say, my health, my life is more important than that cookie over there or that bag of chips. And so I want to know if you're committed. If you're not, then this is probably not the diet for you or the nutritional lifestyle. There are other choices that are easier to maintain long-term than the ketogenic diet. However, I will say that the keto diet is wonderful in the results that it gets quickly and just quickly. So I want to make sure also that you all stay to the end, because I am going to have a couple of wonderful offers for you. So just make sure that they're affordable and very effective. So stay till the end. So what is the ketogenic diet? So the ketogenic diet is very popular right now. And what it is when your body stops using sugars and carbohydrates as fuel because they get broken down into glucose and your cells take in glucose. Instead, your body switches to fats as a food source, and those fats are broken down into ketones, and that's what's the particular ketogenic diet. People hear about it now, and if maybe probably the first thing you've heard was that Dr. Atkins several decades ago had a very low carb diet that he used. And there were some problems with it back then, although he's changed that now. But what we don't know is that it was used as far along as 500 BC. That's when the ketogenic diet was actually first used for medicinal purposes. For the more modern medicine, though, it wasn't until the 1920s. And what it was used for then were young children who had epileptic seizures. And what they found is that if they used this high-fat, low-carb diet, that the children stopped having seizures. It was wonderful. And that kind of stayed on until medications came out. So the anti-seizure drugs started coming out. And then the diet fell away. So even though it was very effective, they stopped using it in favor of using medications and drugs on the children. So losing the ketogenic way. Why do we lose weight on a ketogenic diet? Well, the body uses food sources. It uses either glucose or it uses ketones. So when you eat a lot of high carbohydrate meals, your body changes those first turns them into glucose, and your cells take that in. And that's what they use for energy. Your brain also uses that for energy. And the brain, as a matter of fact, uses about 20% of our energy source. So your brain really loves glucose. However, when the body doesn't have glucose, so when you stop feeding it the carbohydrates, it has about 2 days of energy stored in the liver in the form of what we call glycogen. And this, once it uses up that stored energy, then it goes into ketones. So those are also little molecules that are made in the liver, and these are now the food source. And so instead of burning carbohydrates and turning them into sugar, now we're burning fat and turning that into ketones. And people wonder, does the brain like ketones? Yes, the brain likes ketones almost as much as it does sugar. So the brain can actually use about 75% of the ketones that are made, and the rest of the energy is actually from protein. It can turn the protein into energy as well. So what are some of the benefits of the ketogenic diet? Well, number one, you should know that the fat carbohydrate combinations like French fries or cookies, things like that are very, very addictive. And so when you kick those out, your calorie count starts going down. Also, you're going to start to lose weight through metabolic flexibility. So what that means is when you eat a lot of carbohydrates, your body gets used to having sugar as its food source, and it doesn't want anything else other than that sugar. However, when you try the keto diet, your body now it goes back and forth between sugar and ketones. So sugar and fat, glucose and ketones. And it goes back and forth. And so it has a metabolic flexibility, and some of that stubborn fat we talked about earlier starts to shift away because now you have that flexibility. Healthy blood sugar. So when you're eating a lot of carbohydrates and sugar, your body makes a lot of insulin. And once you have a lot of insulin on a routine basis, like high insulin, high insulin, high insulin, the body stops listening to it. It's kind of like it's the police and it stops listening. And so you start having a higher and higher blood sugar. So when you will take away some of that carbohydrates, the sugars go away, the insulin levels drop, and you stabilize. Something that people also don't realize is that cholesterol, you think I'm eating fat, so does this mean that there's going to be, my triglycerides are going to go up? Is my cholesterol going to go up? The answer is, and it seems paradoxical, the answer is actually no, it does not. If anything, it starts to go down. The treatment of neurological disorders. Now, we talked about in the 1920s, they were using that for children with epilepsy, and that it was very efficacious. So we know it worked for that. But what we're seeing now in some studies are that things that are chronic, like Alzheimer's, we're seeing that we put people on a ketogenic diet, that they may also have some response and respond well. And the last thing is we're seeing possibly treating certain types of cancer as well with a ketogenic diet. And again, it's forcing the body to use a different way to sustain itself with these ketones, especially in the brain, which makes sense. I mean, the brain likes ketones, uses about 75% of them. So it makes sense that if we make the brain healthy, less brain fog, maybe also less brain cancer. So these are some of the things we just talked about, curbing the appetite. Why does a ketogenic diet curb your appetite? Well, because when you use ketones, you are breaking up fat. That's how you start losing the weight. That fat in your system decreases your appetite. So when you think about it, if you have, say, a breakfast with eggs and bacon and, lots of fat in it, are you hungry faster, or if you ate a donut? So if you have a high carb versus a high fat meal, you're going to be fuller longer with the high fat meal. So it does curb your appetite. It reduces risk. We just kind of briefly talked about that. So things like your diabetes, if you have high blood pressure, all of these things start to decrease as well. So what's on the menu? This is what everybody wants to know. What am I going to eat on the ketogenic diet? So think high fat. So we just talked about, and see here, these are some of the pictures that we want. We're going to start with leafy vegetables. So anything grown above the ground, any vegetable grown above the ground is probably going to be okay. So the things like spinach and green vegetables and things that are above. The ones that are below, the ones that, some of us think are kind of tasty, including me, like potatoes, those are going to be off limits for a while. And we'll talk about the levels of carbohydrates that we can use. Fruits. Now, lots of fruits are very high in carbohydrates. The ones that you can continue to eat are things like berries. So we have raspberries up there. Dried fruits we're going to have to be kind of careful with because they do tend to be a little bit higher in carbohydrate count. Nuts and seeds, wonderful. If you love macadamia nuts, that's an excellent thing to go. Most green vegetables are going to be okay. Meats are fine. Eggs, cheese. Now that's something that, and we'll talk a little bit about this versus the paleo diet later, but cheese is something if it's high fat. So dairy is okay as long as it is high fat. You don't want skim milk. You want whole milk and cream. These are the things that are going to give you that high fat amount. Okay. So we want to hit about 30 grams of carbohydrates per day. And so what we're going to do is another poll. So which of these is 30 grams of carbohydrates? The big bowl of blueberries, the bunch of zucchini, or the bowl of pecans? So which one? Let's start this poll. If I can get that started. And did I do this? I'm kind of sharing results. No, I don't want to do that. Okay, so let's launch that one. So we do have a poll now. So which is the 30 grams of carbohydrates? Is it the blueberries, the zucchini, or the pecans? Let's see. We got some votes for all three. It's like a third, and a third. Uh-oh, blueberries are winning. Blueberries are winning. We'll take a couple more answers. Blueberries are winning. And it looks like blueberries get the win at 30 grams of carbohydrates. So let's answer the question, though. Let me put that back up. I'm sorry, let me just take this out 1 second. There we go. I'll start this again. So actually, it's all three. It is all three. So the blueberries, the zucchini, and the nuts are all 30 grams of carbohydrates. Now, with the pecans, that's probably also about 1,500 calories. So that could be close to your calorie count for the day, although we don't actually count calories too much. But all three of these are 30 grams. Next, which one of these is 30 grams? So we have not quite 2 slices of bread, Frappuccino, a half a Frappuccino, and a can of Red Bull. So I'm not even going to poll you on this one. I'm going to tell you again, they're all 30 grams of carbohydrates. Okay. However, my question on this poll is, how many sips, how much of the Red Bull do you get to drink before you hit that 30 grams? Okay, so we're going to start another poll right here. Okay. How many sips of Red Bull? Is it the whole can, half a can, or just 4 sips? Somebody says 4 sips. Ooh, half a can. Let's see, it's 50-50 for half a can. Half a can, 3. Half a can's winning. Okay. All right. Well, let's end this poll, and I'll tell you what it is. It's actually 4 sips. 4 sips of Red Bull is your carbohydrate count for the entire day. So this is where you really have to be careful with what you eat. Okay. So what are you going to be ditching? So as you look at this picture, on the right side, we've got all the stuff that, that, let's be honest, we like to eat. Popcorn and pizza and hot dogs. And we know that these are the things that on a low carb diet, we're not going to be able to eat. So those are out. But how many of you realize that there's something on the left side as well, things that are actually pretty healthy that we're going to also have to kind of step away from for a few days, or as long as we're on the ketogenic diet. And one of those big ones is bananas. Bananas are pretty high up there, unless you're going to eat 1 banana and then that's it for the day. So it really is a matter of what's going to be the best thing for you. So what do you have in the morning? This is a wonderful picture. This is called a crustless quiche. And what I want to do for all of you, I'm going to send you all of these recipes. After we finish the webinar, you'll get all of these recipes. So this is a quiche that you make with eggs and bacon, and it's really kind of good. If you don't like bacon, there's some of you I know who don't. What do you eat for lunch? Lunch, for most people, is probably the easiest thing to do is to just take what you had for dinner the night before. If you don't want to do that, think a lot of vegetables, a lot of those green vegetables, some tomatoes are fine, and then meat. And you don't have to even stick to the lean meat. Like some of the diets, you can only have skin, boneless, dry chicken breast. No, you don't have to do that. You season it up. You can have fatty things like short ribs. These are wonderful on a ketogenic kind of diet. So, and then for dinner, you're just going to go all through this. And I don't know why I picked this picture, because they got potatoes on that picture over there on the left. You're not eating potatoes. No potatoes. And you can have dessert. So a lot of people think that you're not going to be able to eat any dessert. Well, yeah, you definitely can. It just has to be high fat. There are some wonderful things you can make with coconut ice cream. Oh my goodness. You take a can of coconut, you freeze it up a little bit, mix it up with a sweetener and with a sweetener like, say, erythritol or stevia, or I love monk fruit right now. That's wonderful. One of those, you can actually put in a little bit of chocolate, and you've got chocolate ice cream that is to die for. So yeah, you can still have dessert. And then for snacks. So for snacks, you're going to be looking, again, for more low-carb things. Take an apple, make it dried. You can dry it, apple slices, nuts, avocados, deviled eggs. It's wonderful to be able to have a huge variety of food. And the important thing is that you don't have to, it's not important, it's especially in the beginning, that you don't limit what you're eating. You really want to eat as much as you possibly can, not as much as you can, but you don't want to limit what you eat. You really want to just look at the carbohydrates. That's what you're limiting to, that 20 to 30 grams per day. So what are some of the myths that we have for this? Well, one of them is, and I think we kind of hit on this earlier, is that the brain doesn't like ketones, and that it's not good for you. Well, the brain, as we mentioned, does. It loves about 75% of the ketones that your body makes. It will eat that. And then whatever it can't, it will use protein and change that protein into ketones to then feed itself. So the body does like ketones, not a problem. Another is that you're not going to get enough good, healthy food. Well, if you're eating the standard American diet, you are probably eating that slide we had a few slides ago with the one on the right with the cheeseburger and French fries and candy. You're not getting any nutrients anyway. The ketogenic diet actually has lots of whole foods, and so you're going to be getting a lot of vitamins, minerals, and proteins that you may have been missing out on anyway. Number 3, fat makes you fat. We already talked about this as well. Fat does not make you fat. The wrong fat will make you fat. So things like trans fats that are in fried foods, canola oil, which was thought to be wonderful for a while, but which actually tends to make the body more inflamed. So what are the fats that we'd be looking for? We are looking towards coconut oil, olive oil, and ghee. So ghee is a clarified butter. It's the butter that the milk solids have been taken out of. So those are the 3 big stays of the ketogenic diet. Who shouldn't go keto? So we know if we want to lose weight, if we have brain fog, if we have joint pain, then keto is good for us. But on the other hand, there are people who shouldn't go keto. And this would be people like type 1 diabetics. So why? Well, their insulin's already low. And if you're going to go on a diet that drops your insulin even lower, what's going to happen? Same thing with type 2 diabetics who are on insulin. Breastfeeding women, they need as much energy as possible. And then people on certain medications, especially like things for high blood pressure. Now, the one that's probably going to hit most of us here tonight is people who are in poor health or stressed states. Stressed states. Who doesn't have stress at this point? So what we want to do is start from a period of health, from a stand of health and strength. You don't want to start this after you had the flu last week. That's not a good thing. You want to be in relatively good condition. And so it's important to know that you don't have any thyroid issues, that you're not diabetic on insulin, that you don't have any of these contraindications. And so if you have any questions, then make sure that you ask your primary care physician, or you can ask me if you want to become one of my patients. So I talked a little bit before about the ketogenic versus the paleo diet, and they're very, very similar in a lot of ways, but then they have some significant differences as well. So on the ketogenic side, they're both, well, let's put it this way, they're both whole food diets. In other words, you're not eating packaged stuff. You want to look in if you go to the grocery store, what we used to say is if you go around the perimeter, then that's the best way to do. So all of the fruits and vegetables, the fresh fruits and everything are going to be around the perimeter of the supermarket, whereas all the box stuff is up and down the aisles. So you want to hit the perimeter when you're shopping. The keto diet, as we have just talked about, is high fat. About 75% of what you're eating of calorie-wise is going to be fat. Sounds like a lot, but it's really not. And moderate to lower protein. So you're not so concentrated on the protein that you eat. Whereas with the paleo diet, it's moderate fat. You really don't want to eat a lot, and also moderate protein. So you're a little bit more balanced there. Keto, very low carb. We talked about this, very low carb. And but on the paleo side, it's moderate. So fruit's going to be okay. You can also eat carbohydrates, sweet potatoes, and that's why I put that picture up there. So avocado is like the poster child for the keto diet, whereas the sweet potatoes are the poster diet for the paleo way of eating, fat and meat. There's no wheat or grains in either one of them. And the reason for that is that both of those have been found to be very inflammatory in a lot of people. So that's a thing to think about if you're considering this at all. Keto, as I mentioned before, high-fat dairy is allowed. So if you want something like the cheese, as long as it's a high-fat cheese, you don't want skim cheese, or cream is a good thing, is okay on the keto diet. Whereas it's a no-no on paleo. Paleo is thought more to be what the Paleolithic people seem to eat. And the issue that a lot of people have with the keto diet is that it can be hard to maintain long term. It's you get started, you lose some weight, and you just kind of after a while, because it really does work on your appetite. You kind of get tired of it. Whereas with the paleo way of eating, because you're just focusing on nutrient dense foods, you tend to be able to maintain this for a longer period of time. Although there are people and proponents for both of them, people who thrive on both of them, people who don't like either one of them. So it really is a very, you have to decide for yourself. So what are some of the side effects? You may have heard of the keto flu. What that is the body actually making that transition from the carbohydrate way to the ketone way. And so what does it feel like? Well, kind of like this woman here who looks like she's just exhausted. You feel tired. You can feel tired. You can have brain fog. In other words, the things you're trying to get rid of can actually get worse for a couple of days, sometimes up to a week or so when you're making that switch. Once you make it, though, it's kind of like the runner's high, where they're dying until they hit that piece where they actually start feeling good, when the endorphins and everything start kicking in. So eventually you will get to that point, but it can take a week or two sometimes to get there. And that's the most difficult part. And that's why I asked about, are you committed? Because those first few days, especially if you're eating a very high carb diet, and the standard American diet is about 200 to 300 grams of carbohydrate a day versus 20 to 30. So we're talking about a tenth of the amount. So how do you survive that first week? Well, the first thing you want to do is you really want to drink a lot of water. You just kind of hydrate yourself, flush everything out. The other thing you want to do is increase your calorie count. So as I mentioned before, especially in the beginning, it's not that important how many calories you take. What's most important is that you have your carbohydrate count down to the 20 to 30 level. That is absolutely the most important thing. Have more salt. That also helps with bringing water into the body and sustaining everything. Add some warm nourishment. And the reason I showed you this, it looks like just regular broth, but what this is actually bone broth. And so unlike bouillon, it's actually bones are taken, it's got the marrow within it, and if you can see, it's got little fat globules. So it's a wonderful thing to drink and to eat. You feel better. It does a lot for you. So add some of that as well. And don't forget to celebrate your victories. I mean, enjoy yourself. If you made it through a week, if you made it through a day without any problems, celebrate and reward yourself. And it doesn't have to be a cookie, maybe a deviled egg or something like that. And it doesn't have to be food. Go out and buy a pair of shoes if you want, or sometimes even just what I will sometimes do is my reward will be, I'm taking a night off and I'll just watch a movie and just relax. So it doesn't have to cost anything, doesn't have to have any calories. It really is just something that means something to you that you can reward yourself with. And you're off, So reminding you again, why did you come here in the first place? What are you trying to achieve in the first place? Well, most of you said you wanted to lose some weight. Some of you said you had some fatigue, some brain fog, and some other. I'm not quite sure what the other was, but these are the things that you're looking for to change, and you can. You just have to have the right way of looking at it and the right commitment and the right direction. And so Premier Wellness there's the link below, www.premierwellness, that's got an E at the premierwellness.com. And we've got lots of resources for everyone who's interested in feeling healthier. And our motto on Premier Wellness is eat, move, live, love. What that stands for is to eat well, to move more, to live wisely, and to love divinely. And when you do all of those things, you're going to have a wonderful life. And that's what I'm here for. So now what I wanted to do is kind of tell you about what you can do. So first, if you don't have a physician, or if your physician is not interested in this, I'd love to have you book with me. What we're going to be doing would be a 45-minute to an hour nutritional consultation. We'll sit down and talk with you about what you're eating now, how you're living with this, and what your goals are. So maybe the keto diet isn't right for you. Maybe the paleo is. Maybe a Mediterranean diet is better for you. There are sometimes reasons why one works better with another person. The other is that we will be offering you a full metabolic workup, so a lab workup. And this is over 25 different lab studies that are looking at possible reasons for why you're having difficulty losing weight. So it could be your thyroid, it could be the fact that your vitamin D levels are low, and a lot of people don't realize that. So when we look at these labs, we have a good idea of what's causing, or what may be causing, your body to hold on to the fat. Another big one is your insulin levels. If your insulin levels are high, you're not losing weight. It will just kind of hold on to that fat. And then once we get those results back, we're going to sit down and talk about what those results showed and what they mean. So that would be the review of systems. And then we will come up with a customized diet for you, as well as any supplements that might be needed. This is usually at $625, but for you this evening, it will be $375, and that is the link below if you would be interested in that one as well. So that would be one thing that you can possibly do, is be booking with me. As I mentioned before, it's not just here in Wichita or Newton, Kansas. It would also be virtually. So we would work on Zoom just like we're doing tonight, only you'd be able to talk as well. And I've done this with many patients. They actually enjoy it because they get to be one-on-one and still be home. So that would be a great thing. And then for everyone here tonight, and I don't want you to do this alone no matter what. Even if you decide not to work with me, I don't want you to do this alone. And so what I've developed is the Keto and Paleo guidebook. And what this has got is not only information about what the keto diet is what we just talked about tonight, but it also has a meal plan for you for 2 weeks, which is taking you through that first couple of weeks of maybe the keto flu, as well as the recipes. And it's over 100 pages. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, all in color, and it's got some motivation as well. And that is a simple $9, very low price. So there's no reason why no one can get started with the keto diet as soon as possible. Now, for those who do want to work with me, I did put that other link up. I'll put that up one more time. So you would just go to that and book that consultation, and we would get you started with the lab work and also meeting with me. And if not, the keto book will give you more than enough information. And I'd like to thank you for taking this time. I hope it answers all of your questions. As a matter of fact, are there any questions? If you do, kind of put them either in the chat box or the Q&A, and I will be glad to answer them now. So if anyone has any questions, I'll take a look and just see. I don't see any. No questions at this point? Nope, not seeing any questions. Well, I'd like to thank you for this evening, and have a wonderful evening. Take care. Bye-bye.